This was the, well, not quite that. It's slightly ambiguous. This was the De Post Belgian Beer Cafe's Facebook page advertising a platter and drinks for $45 deal. And there was a picture of an Orthodox Jewish man with the words, "Now that's a bargain." Before we talk to Stephen, how racist is it, do you think, to, in inverted commas, amiably stereotype Jewish people as being adroit with money? Is it always denigrating? Can it be amiable? What do you think?
Well, if I'll start, then that particular instance doesn't sound good to me. It doesn't sound good because it's was it a newspaper advert or an
No,
what was it, online?
Yeah, online.
Yeah, that seems to sort of highlight in an unsavoury way a certain characteristic which is perceived to be belonging to one group, and that doesn't make me feel comfortable. I understand the casual conversations that people have and the Irish jokes and the Scottish jokes and the English jokes and everything else, the Kiwi jokes, the Aussie jokes, but that sounds like a bit of a formal classification of a group of people, and it doesn't feel right to me somehow.
All right. Stephen, or shall I ask the other Stephen?
Well, I think it's interesting because this is a discussion that I thought was settled a long time ago. We were going to try and be colourblind or culture blind or race blind, if you like, but it's been forced back in by, very deliberate changes in our laws to espouse some racial stereotypes. It's very, very dangerous now to challenge the idea that somehow Maori are particularly concerned selflessly for the environment as opposed to Pākehā who aren't. And so we're deep into it in a legal sense, but we're also running into it in science. The science is getting pretty clear. Ashkenazi Jews have an average IQ of 115. That's a whole standard deviation away from the norm. And so seeing them as brainy and good with money or good with anything is actually validated statistically. And those kind of things, there's an awful lot of work now showing that there are quite a lot of behavioural characteristics that can be tied to genes, not just the nurture that we all fondly hoped it would be. So
okay,
it's coming.
Okay, before we get into the IQ, well, we don't have time to get into the IQ territory, but Jewish Council President Stephen Goodman is joining us. Stephen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jim.
As you've said in media, this isn't a hill to die on, as it were, but I wonder, how seriously did you view it?
Well, we just feel that any form of stereotyping, racial, ethnic, religious, doesn't really have a place in advertising in New Zealand. The casual conversation bit is quite different, but when it's formalised into an advert, it just doesn't. We just don't feel comfortable with it.
Okay, so although perhaps the person posting it on Facebook thought it meant Jewish people excel in business, whatever the intentions, you're thinking it's difficult to actually construe it as affectionate.
Yes, in many ways.
Yeah, all right. And that kind of sums it up. I'm sorry your time with us has been so short, but we got a bit crimped for it. So thank you, Stephen Goodman. Thank you also, Stephen Franks.
Thank you, Jim.
On the panel today. And Gary McCormick, always nice to have your company, both of you.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Jim.
And that's us for another day. Thank you, everybody, and for listening. And Checkpoint with John Campbell is coming right up.
Kia ora everyone. Tonight the NZRL, that's New Zealand Rugby League, they're about to hold a media conference in Sydney. Jesse Bromwich and Kevin Proctor. And cocaine, we will have the latest on what the New Zealand Rugby League bosses are going to do with them. A group of Auckland business owners say they're terrified after coming face to face with a gang of armed robbers using baseball bats this morning. Whanganui MP Chester Burrows in this charge of careless use of a motor vehicle causing injury. France's President Emmanuel Macron, like Trump, like Brexit, he came from nowhere, but he was an antidote to populist nationalism. Cyclone Donna and what she is up to. Maori TV CEO resigns, and more. Katrina's back first, though, with the news.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, good afternoon. Ko Katrina Batanaho. A woman has described her horror as a vehicle driven by the MP for Whanganui, Chester Borrows, approached her at a protest against the Trans-Pacific Partnership last year. The National Party MP and Deputy Speaker is on trial in the Whanganui District Court on a charge of careless use of a motor vehicle causing injury. Denise Lockett says she was standing across the exit of a driveway when Mr Borrows and Cabinet Minister Paula Bennett left a breakfast meeting in March 2016.
Horror actually flooded all the way through me. I thought, oh my God, you're going under, girl. And I folded over the bonnet.
Denise Lockett told the court Mr Borrows approached slowly, paused briefly before speeding up. Chester Borrows' lawyer says the protesters deliberately blocked his path and people in their group were acting threateningly. Aid agencies say they're still unable to reach the worst-hit communities in Vanuatu's north after Cyclone Donna slammed into the region. The cyclone has continued to intensify and is now a Category 5 storm with winds gusting up to 300 kilometres an hour. The spokesperson for the Red Cross in the Pacific, Corrine Ambler, says the Torres Islands felt the full force of the storm.
Many houses have been destroyed. Most houses have been damaged. The only cell phone tower is down. About 1,000 people are sheltering in 30 evacuation centres, including a cave. And we have water sources contaminated and crops destroyed and that kind of thing. But thankfully at the moment, no injuries reported.
Corrine Ambler says aid workers are on standby to fly into affected areas once the weather clears. The cyclone is now heading south towards New Caledonia. The French President-elect Emmanuel Macron has promised he'll use his mandate to unite a divided country and rebuild its economy. Elected with 2/3 of the valid votes, Mr Macron admits the task facing him is daunting and he'll need to build support for his reform programme. The BBC's Lucy Williamson reports.
Emmanuel Macron has won France's new battle of ideas, his liberal project decisively beating the protectionist promises of his far-right rival Marine Le Pen. But France is still a divided country, with less than a quarter of the electorate choosing Mr Macron's programme in the first round of voting 2 weeks ago. Speaking to thousands of supporters gathered to greet him in central Paris, he said he would respect the disagreements that existed between those who had voted for him against Ms Le Pen. But he also referred to those who had voted for his opponent, saying they had expressed their rage, their loss and their convictions.
Lucy Williamson reporting. A homeless Dunedin mother says there are more than a dozen people applying for some rental properties. The Labour MP for Dunedin South, Claire Curran, says the city has a growing housing crisis which government agencies have no plan for. Average house values in Dunedin have leapt 17% in the past year to $371,000 and many rents have jumped too. Natalie Sinclair, who has 5 children, has spent 10 weeks in motels and staying with relatives since leaving a rental house which became unaffordable. She says she's getting desperate.
We were advised to move and we did and then couldn't find anywhere else to stay. So yeah, especially with needing more bedrooms and you go look at a property and there's 14, 15, 16 people looking around each property that you want to go and apply for.
Natalie Sinclair says she keeps hearing of other people in similar situations. Initiatives to improve housing for Māori will receive $27 million in the budget. The Māori Development Minister, Te Ururoa Flavel, says his money will fund more home improvements, whānau housing projects and support marae. $9 million over 3 years will be spent on trialling new approaches to help whānau into their own homes. Mr Flavel says Māori families are already benefiting from shared equity or rent-to-buy arrangements, and the government wants to look at more community-led initiatives. A Crown Research Institute has put a ban on sending rare plant specimens to Australia after biosecurity officers destroyed historic lichen specimens. Landcare Research operates the Allen Herbarium near Christchurch, which collects native and exotic plants and makes them available to researchers. The Herbarium's director, Ilse Breitwieser, says it found out last week Australian Biosecurity destroyed lichen specimens from the 1930s, destined for the Australian National Herbarium in Canberra. Dr Breitwieser says the leading herbaria council in Australia is making inquiries with their government.
Very significant loss. It's an irreplaceable collection. It has high historic and scientific value, and it has a major impact on research because very important specimens got destroyed.
Ilse Breitwieser says Australian biosecurity officers also recently destroyed historic and valuable plant specimens sent from France to Brisbane. It's 5:05. In sport, the head of the National Rugby League, Todd Greenberg, is satisfied with the punishment Melbourne has imposed on Kiwis captain Jesse Bromwich after his involvement in a drug scandal over the weekend. Bromwich has been banned for 2 games by the Melbourne Storm and also stood down from the team's leadership group after he and Kiwis teammate Kevin Proctor were accused of taking an illegal substance following Friday's test in Canberra. Sports editor Stephen Hewson reports.
Jesse Bromwich was forced to donate his test fee to a charity, while Proctor has yet to be sanctioned by his Gold Coast club, although he has stepped down from playing duties and the team captaincy. The NRL's chief executive, Todd Greenberg, says he's comfortable with the way the clubs are handling the incident. Neither Bromwich or Proctor are expected to face criminal charges, but Greenberg has backed the game's drug testing procedures, although he wouldn't say whether Proctor or Bromwich were tested over the weekend. The New Zealand Rugby League chief executive Alex Hayton has been meeting with Kiwis coach David Kidwell in Sydney today, and he's due to address a media conference on the incident about now. This is Stephen Hewson.
After 36 previous attempts and a broken neck, the New Zealand equestrian Andrew Nicholson says it was all worth it, finally winning the badminton horse trials for the first time. The 55-year-old, who broke his neck while competing in 2015, holds the record for having completed the most badminton events without victory. But on Nerio, it was 37th time lucky for Nicholson. 3 New Zealanders finished in the top 5, with Tim Price 3rd and Sir Mark Todd 4th. That's the news.
Cyclone Donna hits the Pacific.
Homes have been destroyed or damaged, schools have been damaged, water and sanitation systems have either been destroyed or damaged, so there is going to be work to do.
Fires hit Piha.
It feels like we've been attacked, you know, when the siren goes off and your stomach feels sick. I hope that the police catch this person before some of the community do.
And myrtle rust hits another nursery.
The game plan doesn't change. We're going to continue to throw the kitchen sink at this thing.
We hit the airwaves weekdays from 6. Join us, Guy Aspinall and Susie Ferguson on Morning Report. Then on 9 to noon, automated financial robo-advice is on its way to New Zealand. What does it mean for consumers? And after 10, writer, critic and editor John Freeman on why people are returning to the physical book. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland, Coromandel Peninsula and Bay of Plenty. Mainly fine, the odd shower about Northland this evening, spreading elsewhere tomorrow. Waikato to Wellington, including Taupo, Taumarunui and Taihape. Mostly cloudy, a few showers from Taranaki to Kapiti today, spreading elsewhere tomorrow. Gisborne to Wairarapa, fine with high cloud. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, mainly fine today, with a period of rain tomorrow. Bulla to Fiordland, a few showers turning to rain this evening from the south. Some heavy and thundery falls possible about Westland and Bulla tomorrow. Rain clearing south of Hokitika tomorrow afternoon or evening. Southland and Otago, mainly fine, a few spots of rain this evening and tomorrow morning, and the Chatham Islands mostly cloudy. It's coming up to 5:09 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thanks, Katrina. We don't usually begin with sport. In fact, I think this may be a first, but Kiwis coach David Kidwell has just announced that embattled Kiwis captain Jesse Bromwich and Kevin Proctor, both of whom play for Australian clubs in the NRL too, of course, will not be considered for the New Zealand team in the upcoming World Cup. At a media conference, which is still going on, I think, in Sydney. It began at 5 o'clock our time, 3 o'clock theirs. Kidwell said the pair had values to uphold and had broken his trust. He said they had also let down the public. It comes, of course, after they were allegedly caught buying cocaine outside a Canberra nightclub, just hours after being really trounced in Friday night's Anzac Day test against the Australians. We're joined on the phone now, I think, by former Kiwis coach Graham Lowe, who coached the Kiwis to victory over Australia in 1983, if I remember correctly, Graham, and also coached Wigan to great success in the British League competition. Are you there?
Yes, John.
It's nice to talk to you because we pre-recorded an interview on this earlier today, not knowing that this announcement was coming up, and I asked you what you think should happen to the players, and you said what?
Yeah, I said they shouldn't be considered. They just can't be considered for this campaign. So,
right,
terrific news. I just heard you say.
Why is it terrific news? What's terrific about that?
Because it's they are good players, but you've got to put a line in the sand. And doesn't just because you can catch the ball and run fast and tackle, doesn't mean to say you should be exempt from behaviour that's not acceptable. And also, it doesn't mean that you can disrespect the history of the game and the guardianship that you hold while you're playing it.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because, and we're about to speak to Ray Warren. We pre-recorded an interview with Ray Warren that we are going to play. And Ray says, look, if these guys were plumbers, we wouldn't even know that they'd been caught. It's such a small amount of cocaine and all that. But are you saying that when you wear the black jersey, when you earn your living playing rugby league, and when you are a role model for young people, the bar is higher?
Yeah, the bar is high. Look, quite apart from the alleged cocaine situation, to be out after 5 o'clock in the morning celebrating after being flogged the night before, I mean, that is absolute disrespect at its highest.
The Kiwis coach has had a tough old time, hasn't he? Did he need to declare that he is the boss here? In other words, there is a sense that there has been a bit of player power at all levels of rugby league in New Zealand. Is this a declaratory line in the stand by league bosses?
I think it's a milestone in David Kidwell's career.
Really? It's that big?
I think it is because he's knows those guys really well. He's good mates with them, I'm sure. And to draw the line in the sand that he's done is not easy. I know what he would have faced. It's not easy, but he's put a far bigger picture ahead of what could be a short-term game.
You, Graham, when you were coaching the Kiwis, you beat them, and you beat a really good Australian team in '83, if I recall, at Langs Park, right? Is that yeah. But you also experienced the other side, which was losing to the buggers. How do you deal with that? Do you go out and drown your sorrows like these boys were doing? What do you do after the losses?
Well, you got to, there's different types of losses as well to keep it in perspective. I mean, that was a pretty bad loss that they had on Friday night. But if you lose and you go down with all guns blazing, there's a different perspective on it. But whether you win or lose, there are guidelines you don't go across, and one of them is it's totally. I don't care what they'd won. It still doesn't allow you to, or shouldn't allow you to go out till 5 o'clock in the morning celebrating when you've got people. You're in the public eye, and you're under the microscope. I mean, you've got to have some responsibility.
Graham Lowe, thanks for joining us. Graham Lowe, who said when we spoke to him earlier today that the guys shouldn't be picked for the Rugby League World Cup. They haven't been picked. As Graham Lowe says, a really strong line in the sand there from the NZRL, New Zealand Rugby League. All of this is just unfolding in Sydney as we speak. Ray Warren is the voice of the NRL, a commentator who's called so many games and is so central to Rugby League's identity in Australia's hometown, has erected a bronze statue of him, say no more. But Ray Warren believes the players should still have been considered for the Cup. This is despite Ray Warren being really anti-drugs and feeling the men needed to be punished. He also reckons that if these were plumbers rather than league players, they wouldn't be in the newspapers, and they'd get a small fine at worst. Still, they were playing for their country, and with the jerseys and the jobs and the paychecks come responsibilities.
Well, that's one of the major things here. I mean, these blokes, one is the captain of New Zealand, and the other is, I think, co-captain of his club side, the Titans. So, I mean, profile plays a very big part in anything you talk about. And that brings us back to why should rugby league players have to serve a bigger penalty or pay a bigger penalty than the young bloke that's a plumber? Well, the reason for that is because they're paid so highly and they're educated, every year they're educated about the danger of drugs or being seen taking drugs. They have access to all the right advice, and they should have had enough education just in their rugby league life to know that it's not right and proper for them as role models to be involved in this illicit drug taking, let alone performance enhancing drugs.
So will they go to the World Cup, do you think, these boys?
I think New Zealand hierarchy should take, a deep breath, think about it. I personally would be taking them to the World Cup. Yeah,
you would be.
I think so. I mean, what I just said to you is true. I mean, why do rugby league players have to pay a penalty bigger than, say, the apprentice plumber? Well, they should have to pay a bigger penalty, but I don't know whether that includes the World Cup, which is about 6 months away.
It was Ray Warren. We spoke to him earlier. He thinks it shouldn't have included the World Cup. Well, breaking news, it is including the World Cup. Jesse Bromwich and Kevin Proctor have been dropped from the World Cup squad as that investigation into cocaine allegations continues across the ditch. All of this has unfolded since 5 o'clock tonight. We'd really love your feedback on this. What do you think? Did New Zealand Rugby League get it right? Text us 2101, email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz, or of course we are on Twitter and Facebook. Lots on the program tonight. This is throwing a cat amongst the pigeons, this announcement. We're going to move now to Maori Bridge, the Auckland suburb of where business owners say they are scared and shaken after coming face to face with a gang of armed robbers this morning. Around 6 men smashed their way into 3 shops with baseball bats just after 5 a.m, ignoring the terrified workers inside. There were people there. Police say they're yet to catch the men, and the shop owners say they have no faith they ever will. It comes a day after politicians and police representatives spoke at a nearby community meeting in Papatoetoe to address the situation of rising crime. Here's Zach Fleming with more.
Sarom Roa was expecting a normal Monday at work when he opened the back door to the Lucky Cafe at Maori Bridge at 5:15 this morning. But instead, he and 3 other workers were welcomed by yelling and glass shattering.
I saw a group of people, maybe 5 or 6 people. They tried to break down the glass into the shop. I tried to shout at them, what are you doing? What the are you doing? So that they're not afraid of me. They're not afraid of us. And they keep breaking the glass into the shop.
Sarom says when he realised the robbers didn't care he was there and weren't going to stop, he ran and called the police.
They're not afraid of us. I don't know why. That's why we're afraid of them. Maybe they use the drug.
There was no cash in the till to steal, so they went next door to the Ruby Red Cafe and then on to Paul Kennedy's fruit and veg shop, again finding no cash at either.
They broke one very large painted glass and the 2 front doors. Made a heck of a mess. Been spending the day cleaning it up.
The group caused upwards of $5,000 worth of damage to 3 shops and stole nothing. And on Saturday night, a petrol station just several hundred metres down the road was robbed, together with a nearby liquor store the night before. Paul's owned the fruit and veg shop for 7 years. He had to close today and says he feels like robberies are becoming more common in Maori Bridge.
It certainly does seem like it's becoming more frequent these days, yeah. To have one burglary in 5 years and then 3 in 18 months, it's like, yeah, it's definitely becoming more common. It appears that sort of anybody can commit a crime these days and almost get away with it.
He says the police have been great, but he has little faith the robbers will be caught.
Listen to you, they talk to you, they give you a lot of support. I don't know if they can actually catch these people, What do you do with a stolen car, with somebody who comes up? CCTV is only so effective when somebody's got a big hood and the mask over their face,
The robbers were captured on CCTV by the Maori Bridge Business Association. The association won't release the footage, but chairperson Pauline Anderson says a significant amount of money's been spent in the past year to try and deter criminals.
It's always disappointing, isn't it, as you say, that amount of money, and it is significant. We could surely use it elsewhere, but also, it's just the way things are, so we just get on with it and do what we need to do to make the place safe.
The police say they are working to review the CCTV, and Paul hopes to reopen his fruit and veg store tomorrow. For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
It's just gone 5:19. You're with Checkpoint. You can watch us on Face TV, which is Sky Channel 83, Freeview Channel 50, and Facebook, of course, along with the RNZ website. Coming up on the program, outrage in Canada from a group of expat New Zealanders who are really furious over an energy drink called haka and using what is clearly moko imagery as their brand labelling. Colin Craig opens his defamation case against Cameron Slater, and Whanganui MP Jester Burrows stands trial on a charge of careless use of a motor vehicle causing injury. Let's go to Europe first, though. In Britain, it was Brexit against projections. Across the Atlantic in America, it was Trump against projections. And in France, well, their new president became favourite to win in the past week or two, but he too was an outsider not very long ago at all. At 39, Emmanuel Macron is an antidote to populist nationalism rather than a manifestation of it. After a bitter and divisive campaign, the centrist and staunch EU supporter has swept to power, resoundingly defeating his right-wing rival, far-right rival, Marine Le Pen. And in the end, what mobilised some of the people who didn't like him to vote for him was the fact he wasn't her. Speaking to thousands of cheering supporters in Paris, Monsieur Macron promised to unite his country while acknowledging he has a colossal task in front of him to form a majority government. The BBC's Katja Erdler was among the crowds.
Young, dynamic and very, very confident. Emmanuel Macron, set to become France's youngest leader since Napoleon, took the crowd by storm.
Face à l'extrémisme. In the face of extremism, I know that there are disagreements, and I will respect this. Mais je serai fidèle. And I will be faithful to that commitment taken. I will protect the Republic. La République.
This is quite an incredible moment. Mighty France, an economic and political world heavyweight, key EU nation, will now be presided over by a 39-year-old virtual political newcomer who's made a lot of big promises. To bring revolution, to change hungry France and the European Union. Business-friendly, yet socially just. Neither left nor right-wing. Sound like a tall order? His delighted supporters have faith.
I'm really happy because Emmanuel Macron is the good solution, the good choice to keep our valor in France. We love Europe.
I'm very happy about these results.
It means confidence, it means future. France is not dead, France is not an old country dying. France has hope.
But easy it won't be. This is a divided country. Marine Le Pen may have lost tonight, but millions voted for her and her far-right programme.
I propose to transform our movement into a new political force, a force which more and more French people are calling for and which is more necessary than ever before to rebuild our country. I call on all patriots to join us for a decisive political battle which begins this evening and will continue in the months ahead.
Far from being defeatist, her supporters were defiant.
You're never happy unless you win, of course, but we've got to look at the very good sides of this result. We have gathered around us people from outside our party for the protectionist views we have for the programme Marine Le Pen has put forward.
Supporters of France's forceful far left also took to the streets tonight, some in a violent mood. For them, Emmanuel Macron is no solution. He's part of the problem, they think, of elitist, big business-minded government. But tonight, a new French revolution is promised, with a new president from a brand new party announcing a new dawn for France. For his supporters, at least, the three colours of the French flag are not just about liberty, equality and fraternity, but above all, hope.
That report from the BBC is coming up to 24 minutes past 5. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ. A woman has described how she was flooded with horror before being struck by a car driven by Whanganui MP Chester Burrows at an anti-TPP protest last year. The National Party MP and Deputy Speaker is standing trial in a charge of careless use of a motor vehicle causing injury. His defence is focused on the deliberate blocking of his car and the antics of a dildo-waving activist. Our reporter Robin Martin has been in the Whanganui District Court in March 2016. His report begins with those words, I believe.
In March 2016, a small group of protesters had gathered at the exit of the Collegiate Quality Inn, waiting for Chester Burrows and Cabinet Minister Paula Bennett to leave a breakfast meeting. Denise Lockett told the court she was holding a crochet protest banner across the driveway when the vehicle driven by Mr Burrows approached the group.
He slowed for a second and then he kept coming. and it seemed to happen very quickly. He didn't slow again, he just kept coming. In my perception, he actually sped up a little.
Ms Lockett said she feared for her safety and for those around her.
Horror actually flooded all the way through me. I thought, oh my God, you're going under, girl. And I folded over the bonnet. I was helpless. And then I felt a very strong hand on my arm, which pulled me away, and it was Vinnie Hay who'd run up, Constable or Officer Hay.
Ms Lockett was not the only protester hit. Tracy Treadwell says a police officer tried to pull her to safety but was too late.
Because he grabbed me, but as he pulled me round, he'd only managed to secure me from the front of the car. I still got clipped. My left knee still got clipped by the passenger side of the car, and my left foot got run over by the passenger wheel.
Both women were treated for soft tissue injuries. That the women were struck is not in contention, but Mr Borrow's lawyer, Nathan Burke, says the woman had ample time to get out of the way. Under cross-examination, he accused Ms Treadwell of walking in front of the vehicle.
You were attempting to swarm that vehicle, weren't you?
No.
And you were only hit on the knee or the foot when you continued lunging forward towards the vehicle.
No, I didn't lunge forward.
Mr Burke also focused on the behaviour of Philip Rewiti, who before the protest had made a threatening Facebook post featuring a picture of a crying Paula Bennett. The post featured a news story headlined, "Outrage after Paula Bennett told a bit of sexual violence never hurt anyone." Above this, Mr Rewiti had added the words, "See you shortly, bitch." He followed that up with a picture of a dildo with the words, "Paula B" written on it. Mr Burke questioned Mr Rewiti about his Facebook post.
It's not a polite invitation, is it?
It depends.
Depends on what?
On what sort of mood.
What, that you're in?
Correct.
So if you're in a protesting mood, you better watch out.
Sometimes.
You accept that, thank you. And you did take that dildo with you to the protest, didn't you?
Yes.
You're waving it around?
Yeah.
Late this afternoon, Mr Burke made an application for the charge to be dismissed, saying Mr Borrows had the right to escape a threatening situation. The judge, Stephanie Edwards, said she will rule on the dismissal at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. In Whanganui for Checkpoint, ko Robin Martin Tēnei.
We're heading out of Canada, where a group of expat New Zealanders are furious that an energy drink is being sold under the name Haka, with branding strikingly similar to Maori moko design. Haka Energy Drink brand slogan, "Unleash Your Inner Warrior," uses the black and white moko designs on its bottles, t-shirts and on the bikinis of their, quote, car wash girls. Kia ora Canada is the group of expat Kiwis, and they've tried repeatedly to talk to the company behind Haka about their commercial appropriation of Māori culture. The company refuses to respond, so they've asked the New Zealand High Commissioner to assist them. The High Commissioner hasn't heard back from Haka's manufacturers either. Matea is from Kia ora Canada, and she told me it all began when one of their group was out for a walk.
He happened to be walking past what we call, or that kind of dairy, it's a convenience store up here, and they had an ad. So he stopped and he took a picture and shared it with the group and just kind of, check this out. It's a moko and it says Haka energy drink. And it all started from there. There was a lot of reaction, not anything positive. And so we reached out to the company and we were very unsuccessful.
What did they say when you reached out to them?
So various members on their own accord reached out to them via two different platforms. Up here, Instagram is very big for companies, boosting brands, very, very popular. So we reached out on Instagram with their account, and myself, I did that. It was immediately blocked, could not now. I still can't view the page and see what's been updated and what's been said.
So their response to your approach was to block you?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, exactly. They just blocked it. I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. Because I wasn't rude, I wasn't insulting. I thought that I reached out to them and just explained that this was my culture, and I was very offended. I live a long way from home, and I'm Maori, I'm a New Zealander, I'm a Kiwi, and I have a lot of pride in that culture, and to see this, I was genuinely offended.
Now, I want,
So
because, sorry, Martha, we're putting images up, and some people will be watching us, but for people sitting in cars listening to the radio on their way home, can you describe the haka branding, the kind of imaging they're using, the imagery they're using?
Yes, of course. So what they've done is they've taken the colours black and white, which is very interesting, and they have kind of a face, like a bit of a techie face. It's kind of cartoonish, but it's very clearly Maori. They've put a tamoko on the face, on the cheeks. It's just, you can clearly associate it with being Maori and our Maori culture. But it's very unflattering. It's a huge insult.
And one of their slogans...
And bastardised it, excuse my language, John, they have.
Well, no, that's entirely appropriate use of the word. And one of their slogans on their energy drink is "Unleash your inner warrior."
Yes. So they've gone... I don't believe that this is a mistake. I think that they've clearly researched and found out about our culture, and they have taken the Maori culture, the mana of our people, and just everything that we are very proud of, and they've marketed it to sell an energy drink.
In fact, not only have they done that, I'm just looking at a clip on YouTube where they've got some women very scantily clad in bikini bottoms with this kind of moko image on the front of the bikini bottoms doing car washes.
Yes, so they have also sexualised the company is using women scantily clad, and unfortunately, if you notice in the car wash scene I just saw, that those short shorts that were ripped in the placement of where the Maori moko, the face is, it's very, very offensive. They also sell merchandise online. They have a website. They have a telephone number. Myself and other members of the group have called the phone number to hopefully speak to somebody or leave a message to get a call back. Nobody answers. It just leaves a message that doesn't even associate the name of the company. It's something that's unrelated. And then when I did get an answer 2 days ago, I said hello, and they hung up on me straight away. I called back, no one picked up again.
We will give them a go, Marta. What would you like us to say to them?
Well, basically, we are very, very offended. We're highly offended, and to be honest with you, we're worth more than $1.99 plus tax at your local store.
Marta, speaking from Canada, we're trying desperately hard to get in touch with the company behind the haka energy drink, but guess what? They're not returning our calls either. Chris Mowat from Tawa has already emailed in. Furious, shocked, outrage seems to be the default position for many New Zealanders. Get a life, the rest of the world doesn't care. We would love your feedback on this. Coming up to 27 minutes to 6, Cyclone Donna has become the strongest cyclone ever to hit the southern hemisphere in May. Aid agencies haven't yet reached the areas hardest hit, low population centres in the north of Vanuatu. We'll go to Port Vila shortly. Maori Television CEO Paora Maxwell has resigned, and Dunedin's housing crisis. But before all of that, let's welcome back Katrina Batten.
New Zealand Rugby League has banned Kiwis captain Jesse Bromwich and teammate Kevin Proctor from the World Cup later this year. The pair were banned after their involvement in a drug scandal in Canberra over the weekend following the Kiwis' test loss to Australia. Their coach David Kidwell told a news conference in Sydney the pair had broken his trust and the trust of their teammates and had also let down the public. Cyclone Donna has continued to intensify and is now a Category 5 storm with winds gusting up to 300 kilometres an hour. The cyclone is heading south after sweeping over northern Vanuatu, destroying or damaging most homes, as well as crops and a cell phone tower. About 100 people are sheltering in evacuation shelters, including a cave, but no injuries have been reported so far. Northern and eastern areas of New Caledonia are now on alert for Donna. The lawyer for the Whanganui MP, Chester Borrows, has applied for a charge of careless driving causing injury against him to be dismissed. The National Party MP is on trial in the Whanganui District Court after 2 women were hurt during a protest against the Trans-Pacific Partnership last year. Judge Stephanie Edwards says she'll make a judgment on the dismissal tomorrow morning. France's new president, Emmanuel Macron, is promising to work to heal the deep divisions in his country, which have seen a rise in support for extremist parties. The former investment banker admits the task facing him is daunting and he'll need to build support for his reform program. A group of vandals smashed several shop fronts in an early morning rampage in the Auckland suburb of Mangere Bridge. The police say they're looking at CCTV footage as part of their investigation. And a missing man has been found in Port Waikato. The police found 78-year-old Paul Ellery safe and well a short time ago after he went missing this morning. Those are the headlines. I'll be back at 6.
We look forward to it. Thanks, Katrina. Let's get to business news now with Jonathan Mitchell, who is our man this week. Excuse me, Jonathan, beaming in from Wellington. Another big bank highlights the squeeze on margins. We had a couple last week that Nona talked about. Interesting, the squeeze on margins. The profit's still a fairly healthy one though, right?
Good evening, John. Yes, we're talking about the New Zealand arm of Westpac here. That profit was down just 3% in the half year ended March to just under $200 million. Like the others, BNZ, ANZ, Westpac also noting that competition to attract customer deposits as well as those higher overseas funding costs. So that growth in lending did outpace deposits, something the other banks have talked about. So Westpac's margins were squeezed down to under 2%. It did see an improvement, though, in its bad debt levels, and it noted the dairy sector, and that's something the other banks have talked about as well. But looking ahead, those mortgage rates, something that people are interested in, don't expect a sudden spike in mortgage rates over the course of the next few months. Expect a more gradual pickup. But now's the time to have deposits in the bank, John. Certainly the banks are fighting for your money, and watch those rates.
Yeah, thank you. A timely reminder to check homes are insured at the correct value. What's all of this about, Jonathan?
This follows a report by Treasury, which has found that up to 85% of New Zealand homes could be underinsured by up to 30%. The onus in a lot of cases now is on the homeowner to indicate the value of their property. That's the so-called sum insured, and that replaces the total replacement cover. So some people might not be aware of that, so they're not increasing that sum insured at the rate that building costs are going up. So the worst case scenario is that a home gets destroyed by fire or an earthquake, and that sum insured is not enough to meet the real building costs. So the solution that the industry is talking about, check with your insurance company on a yearly basis, check your sum insured is at the right level and that you have an appropriate level of cover.
Thanks, Jonathan. What happened on the markets today?
Well, the euro did make some quite solid gains after that French presidential election. They like Emmanuel Macron's pro-EU and business stance. Back here in New Zealand, the top 50 index also had a solid rise, up 61 points to finish the day at 7,426. And the dollar is trading at 69.2 US cents and 93.4 Australian. Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan Mitchell, who's doing business from Wellington for us this week. Just before we move on Friday we spoke to Pike River families and to the police about footage of workers in the drift at Pike River mine. Whilst the families had been shown footage from within Pike, they had not been shown footage of men working in the drift, wearing breathing apparatus, yes, but walking through shot in basic gumboots, standard overalls and with bare hands. The families are demanding an explanation as to why they weren't shown this footage. They've yet to receive one they regard as plausible. In the context of repeated assertions by Solid Energy and the government that the drift is simply too dangerous to enter, footage of men in the drift would seem material, particularly when mines rescue personnel say it's safe to enter and they would enter and do the work required. So today we put in an urgent Official Information Act request asking who was responsible for the editing of the footage, whose decision was it to withhold these shots from the family until they were leaked to them and then only publicly released by police last week. Our request was declined under Section 18E of the Official Information Act because no records exist or can be found. We're surprised no records exist and we want to ask anyone who is able to help us answer this question to get in touch. We are prepared to deal with people in strict confidence. Please do contact us on perhaps email is the best way to do so, checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. Anyone who can answer who is responsible for this footage not being shown to the families before it was released, leaked to them and then finally publicly released last week, please do get in touch. It's coming up to 20 minutes to 6. The former leader of the Conservative Party says he was subjected to a modern version of the medieval punishment known as the stocks. Today, Colin Craig opened his defamation case at the High Court in Auckland against Cameron Slater and the company that owns Mr Slater's blog. He says his reputation was dragged through the mud as a result of Mr Slater's blog. Our court reporter Edward Gay was there.
In his opening address to the court, Colin Craig summed up his case against whale oil blogger Cameron Slater like this.
This is a case about reputations. It's a defamation case. It's going to be particularly relevant, I think, because one of the key issues that we're going to have to look at is what duties are there on bloggers in terms of what they say and how they report that. Firstly, to be accurate, and also to address their social responsibility in performing the role of a journalist.
Mr Craig is suing Mr Slater for 18 separate statements, which he says are defamatory. Many of the statements relate to Mr Craig's relationship with his former press secretary, Rachel McGregor. Mr Craig acknowledged he had a close working relationship with Miss McGregor, and the pair would often text and write letters to each other. He said he believed Miss McGregor welcomed his letters and read out one of her responses.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for your letter. Some of the words in it are powerful. It means so much to me that you have taken the time to write it. Thank you. I'm rereading and rereading it. Smiley face.
He said on election night in 2011, after the pair had been working long hours, they kissed. He said both regretted what had happened and they agreed on boundaries in their relationship. 3 years later, 2 days before the 2014 election, Miss McGregor resigned after a dispute over pay. The next he heard from Miss McGregor was that she had filed a sexual harassment claim against him. The pair eventually came to a confidential settlement. But meanwhile, stories were appearing on Cameron Slater's blog. Mr Craig said he stepped down while a review of the allegations took place, but they took on a life of their own.
So damaging were the allegations that ultimately, in discussion with the party I founded and loved and poured my heart and soul into, I stepped down even as being a member of that party.
Mr Craig said he decided to refute the allegations by publishing a booklet.
My reputation had already been dragged through the mud, and I had been ridiculed and vilified extremely publicly. It felt almost like I'd been subjected to a modern version of the medieval stocks, where people were immobilised in a public place and rotten food was thrown at them.
It is for this booklet that Mr Slater's counter-suing Mr Craig, claiming more than $16 million in damages. Mr Craig addressed this.
If you are attacked, you are allowed to respond. It's a robust privilege. And to quote from a couple of cases, you may be violent or excessively strong in the language used. Replies are not to be measured on nice scales.
Colin Craig says he'll be calling up to 8 witnesses, including his wife and Conservative Party staffers. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi ko Edward Gay aho.
It has been an eventful year for cyclones and for them defying predictions. Cook did somewhat less damage than predicted, Debbie did a lot more, and Donna is doing what? It's hard to say. The areas of Vanuatu that it hit are now cut off, although it changed its path away from initial projections that it would pass over the most populated areas of the country. It also confounded predictions about its strength, growing to Category 5 when forecasters had predicted 3. It is now the strongest cyclone ever measured in the South Pacific in May. Lachlan Forsyth is in Port Vila with UNICEF. He told me via Skype video the rain there is torrential, but the winds are mercifully calm. And as for the areas the cyclone has passed over...
So Donna's been bouncing around over the weekend throughout some of these very remote and very hard to communicate with islands. And so part of the issue is trying to find out just what the need may be. Now, we basically take our lead from the Vanuatu government. We understand there has been some infrastructure and buildings either damaged or destroyed. We're talking about things like some homes have been destroyed, water and sanitation systems, even people's gardens have been destroyed. So of course they all create issues in terms of what do you drink, what do you eat, where do you shelter for the next few weeks. So it's getting that information in before we actually know what sort of response may be needed.
Have you any idea where it's going? Because the north was relatively spared by Pam. Is it heading back towards Pam country?
John, I'm just going to put my phone by my ear so I can hear your question one more time. Try that again.
Well, Lockie, is that how hard the rain is? Because we can't really see it. But is the rain so torrential you can't even hear me?
Well, look, it's pretty heavy from a a Wellington point of view, maybe, but it's not helped by the fact I'm under a corrugated iron. So it's kind of a problem of my own making.
Okay, so Lockie, where is Donna heading? Is it going to head now towards the parts of Vanuatu that were so devastated by Pam?
Well, our latest information, excuse me, is that she's now starting to head south, which hopefully means that she's going to miss Vanuatu. It's now tracking more towards New Caledonia. Now, the problem with a tropical cyclone is you just don't know where it's going to go. Someone described it as like spinning a coin on a tabletop. It'll go where it wants to. The indications are it's going to keep going straight south, which, you know, fingers crossed she does, because the last thing you'd want is now for this Category 5 tropical cyclone to head towards land and head towards those really populated areas.
Lachlan Forsyth, who's up in Vanuatu, Port Vila, for UNICEF. We're looking at where Donna is heading now, and we will update you if there are any reports from areas that the cyclone has hit hard. A former Maori television staffer says she's disappointed it's taken so long for the station's chief executive, Paora Maxwell, to resign. Ngāi Tahu television producer and director Mandy Toogood says Mr Maxwell's legacy will be the loss of a large number of skilled staff that left under his stewardship. Our Māori Issues correspondent Mihi Narangi Forbes has more.
After 3 years rowing the Maori TV waka, former program maker Paora Maxwell is hanging up the paddle, citing family and business as the reasons for his early departure. Mr Maxwell declined RNZ's interview requests for an interview today, but he did speak to Maori TV presenter Piripi Taylor from Te Kaya this afternoon.
Look, there is speculation that you've fallen out with the board. What's happened?
Well, the speculation is speculation. that's what's happened. But you know, the real reasons why I'm leaving Whakaata Māori are personal ones.
So there is no fallout with board member John Tamihere?
No, there's no fallout with any board member.
Mr Maxwell came into the role at Maori TV under a cloud of controversy. Maori TV board chair Georgina Te Heuheu led the team which employed him, despite opposition from staff and industry people at the time.
That recruitment process, at the time we were going through it, seemed to be a biggie for others. We followed process, we followed due process. It takes a whole board to appoint somebody. That's what we did. He came in. There was a lot of work to do. He just got on with it, and so did we.
About a third of Maori Television staff left during Mr Maxwell's time at the station. Ms Te Heuheu wasn't concerned with that turnover rate.
We've gained very good experience in that time. So, you know, again, you can't stand still, and you've got to work hard to try and attract good talent, and I think we have. The results show we have.
We also requested an interview with Māori Development Minister Te Ururo Flavel, who supported Mr Maxwell into the role and was a key speaker at his pōwhiri in 2014. But he declined, stating it was an operational matter. Mr Flavel would only say the board had met its targets.
To this point in time, all of the requirements have been met, year in and year out, by way of reporting and otherwise, so we're very comfortable with where things have gone.
Mr Maxwell came under fire last year when he was criticised for trying to sack 2 receptionists for not speaking fluent Te Reo Māori. Shortly after his tenure began, documents obtained by RNZ under the Official Information Act reveal he spent more than $30,000 repainting his new office, replacing a couch, chairs and buying new televisions for the walls. Labour's Māori Broadcasting spokesperson Piini Henare has been critical of Mr Maxwell's management in the past. He says Mr Maxwell's resignation is a good opportunity for the channel to refocus.
They seem to have come to the conclusion, or at least offered an opportunity for Paora to move on, and I think it's an opportunity now for everyone just to put their energies into moving forward. In the time that Paora's been there's already been a number of changes on the board. And I'm just glad that they were able to see the back of Paora and hopefully a new dawn.
Former executive director at the station, Mandy Toogood, lost her job at Māori TV soon after Mr Maxwell was appointed. Ms Toogood, who has worked throughout the industry and across different television networks for almost 30 years, says she often reflects on the loss of staff that followed her exit.
How disappointing it was to see the level of experience and the calibre of people that sadly Maori Television lost due to Para's appointment. A lot of experience walked out that door that they'll never regain. Specifically Julian Wilcox, Carol Hirschfeld. There are many other people behind the camera that the public wouldn't know of by name.
But Mr Maxwell told Maori TV he doesn't have too many regrets.
I'm very happy that we have a focus at Whakaata Māori about our audience. I'm not too sure it was there before I arrived, but I could be wrong. But, you know, I don't think there would be a kaimahi in the building that wouldn't understand the importance of engaging with our audience, because our kaupapa is about engagement. You know, kia kaingako kia kōrero tia, kia tautoko na te reo Māori, e ngā tangata katoa o Aotearoa, taking the language te reo and the tikanga to our people, hei oranga, but also taking it to wider New Zealand. And what we know now is that we're very effective about what we do.
Mr Maxwell will remain as CEO until the end of August. Mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko mihi ngā rangi Forbes, ahau.
We began the program tonight with the breaking news that the two Kiwi League players and also NRL League players, of course, who were caught allegedly doing something with cocaine, allegedly. We just say allegedly a lot and it gets us out of any trouble. In Canberra, after the Kiwis' pretty bad loss to Australia on Friday night, have been stood down from the Rugby League World Cup. We asked for feedback. We've got a lot of it. So here's a sample. Thank you. Hi, John. With regards to the Kiwi players, since when did being selected for a side become a right to these guys and not a privilege? Drugs aside, how can a professional athlete staying up partying until 5 a.m. be taken seriously? That can only be detrimental to the performance of someone who's supposed to be in their athletic peak. If a plumber stayed out till 5 a.m, I'm sure their employer would find ways of punishing them too beyond a fine. There is no winners in the situation. The NZRL can't win no matter what decision they come up with, says Dan. Surely there are standard protocols in place in the event that through drug testing players are caught with recreational drugs in their system. If this is a two-match stand-down and the next Kiwi test are at the World Cup, then the punishment appears to fit the crime. They're just unlucky that the next tests are at the World Cup, but they only have themselves to blame. As the saying goes, nothing good happens after 3 a.m. And Nick says, John, we should not be holding rugby players up as role models to be made examples of. It's a poor career choice. And there are many better sports people for our youth to idolise than these alcoholic macho men, says Nick. Thank you for your feedback. Lots of it. We'll bring you more later. Let's go to South Korea, though. We've been in France already tonight. The South Koreans are going to the polls as well. Of course, remember their president stood down after that corruption scandal. One of the key issues is how to deal with their hostile neighbours to the north. Polls show a healthy lead for a Liberal candidate, Moon Jae-in, seen as untainted in a political system with its fair share of forms of corruption and one widely regarded as deeply flawed by many South Koreans. CNN's Paula Hancock has this report from Seoul.
Pure excitement at seeing the presidential frontrunner. Moon Jae-in has dedicated supporters, old and young, and he's enjoying a significant lead in the polls. His policy on North Korea, though, has voters split. A Liberal candidate, Moon is pro-engagement. He supports dialogue with Pyongyang, even organising the last North-South summit in 2007. A group of North Korean defectors last week claimed 3,000 of them would leave South Korea and seek asylum elsewhere if Moon wins. Defectors traditionally vote Conservative for a more hardline approach to the regime they fled. But also some rare defector support for Moon. The feeling here is that he's the only one who can prevent a future war on the peninsula. Our parents, brothers and sisters are all in North Korea, says this former member of the elite. The second we carry a rifle to defend South Korea, we'll be pointing a gun towards them. Moon declined repeated requests for a television interview, but tried to fight criticism he's too soft on North Korea in a televised address. I will not tolerate any military provocation from North Korea, he says. Through crisis management and a solid alliance with the US, I will stop the war from happening. Moon lost in the last presidential race to former President Park Geun-hye. Clark has been impeached and imprisoned, currently on trial for extortion and bribery. She denies all charges against her. But Moon is assumed to have picked up support for being the opposite of her in policy and personality.
He stood very clearly against her. So one big reason for his support is that he's not her.
Former businessman Anchal Su also supports negotiations with Pyongyang, even highlighting the fact he went to the same business school as US President Donald Trump as a way of connecting with the country's main ally. Hong Jun-pyo, the Conservative candidate from Park's former party, suffered a political body blow from her impeachment and holds a harder line against Pyongyang. 13 candidates in all vying for the top job. The result expected overnight Tuesday.
Paula Hancock's reporting from Seoul. Families sleeping in cars, garages, couch surfing with their kids, maybe most closely associated with Auckland's housing crisis. But the Dunedin Labour MP, Claire Curran, says her office is besieged with desperate calls for help, for shelter in a city that's seen annual house prices jump more than 12% and the waiting list for a state house spike. She's accused the government of not taking the growing problem seriously. Here's our Otago Southern reporter, Ian Telfer.
I've had a housing New Zealand house before, and I've never been on the waiting list this long. And this is the last point of my life I've ever been.
Ashley Tahiri's doing it tough. She's been living in motels around Dunedin with her 2 kids for 2 months. Ms Tahiri's pregnant with her 3rd child and says she's getting desperate to get into a state house before the winter.
I ended up getting kicked out of my father's house, had a family dispute, and I went to Winds and they helped me out here, put me in a hotel. I've been here since, been waiting for Housing New Zealand to get me back. No point looking at, I have been looking at private houses, but they ain't gonna give it to me because of my credit rating and all that.
What do they say?
They don't bring back or anything. So, yeah, I'm sort of depending on Housing New Zealand.
On the street outside the Work and Income office in South Dunedin, Natalie Sinclair tells me she's waiting for yet another appointment to put her case for a state house. A single mother with 5 kids aged between 2 and 12, Ms Sinclair's family's now been 10 weeks without a stable house since leaving their last one.
Our rent was $3.90 a week and getting put up to $4.20, and we couldn't quite afford it. So just was looking for something a bit cheaper, and we were advised to move, and we did, and then couldn't find anywhere else to stay. So, yeah.
So you're kind of getting caught as the rents go up?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially with needing more bedrooms, and you go look at a property and there's 14, 15, 16 people looking around each property that you want to go and apply for.
The Salvation Army stepped in last Thursday to put the family in a motel over the weekend and have now found a flat for a few weeks while the family waits for a Housing New Zealand house. Dunedin's median house price has jumped to $340,000, more than 4 times the median household income of $75,000. But the families without a roof are mostly on benefits and getting less than half that. Fewer state houses and a growing waiting list have made matters worse. An early childhood teacher, Marie Neal, and up to 4 of her 6 children have been staying in camping grounds and relatives' houses and spent 2 weekends sleeping in her car in the last month. She has to go to Work and Income every week, but has been told it might take a year to get a house.
It's really hard. It's really hard having to go in there every week, and it's quite humiliating, and it's not a nice situation. And I appreciate and understand that they're just doing their job and stuff, but it is, it's a pretty disheartening situation to be in.
All these families went to their local MP, Claire Curran, for help. Ms Curran says it's become commonplace to hear stories of people with nowhere to go. She says the government's been caught flat-footed and its agencies seem incapable of responding, but it's time for action.
We need a real commitment by this government to increase emergency housing places within the next few weeks. We need a team established from the Ministry of Social Development in our city right now.
The government insists it has responded. The Social Housing Minister, Amy Adams, says it's planning to put 40 more social houses in Dunedin over 3 years and increase the number of emergency housing places to support 104 families a year. But Claire Curran says those are just words so far. leaving dozens of families in crisis going into a long, cold winter. In Dunedin for Checkpoint, Ian Telfer.
Thanks, Ian. 30 seconds before the 6 o'clock news with Katrina. A bit more of your feedback on the 2 rugby league players not being eligible for the New Zealand team in the Rugby League World Cup. The penalty should fit the crime. There is no crime, says Joe Tonner. No World Cup is a gross injustice for youthful exuberance. And professional rugby players, as required to be role models, as that's what their sponsors demand for the millions they pay to promote and protect their product. You're really divided on this. Thank you for your feedback at 6 o'clock.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui, good evening. Ko Katrina Batten-Aho. The Kiwis coach David Kidwell says Jesse Bromwich and Kevin Proctor have been axed from the squad for October's World Cup. The players have been accused of using cocaine after the Anzac Test loss on Friday. Bromwich has quit as Kiwis captain and from the Melbourne Storm's leadership group. He's also been suspended for 2 NRL games, while Proctor has stood down as co-captain at Gold Coast. Speaking at a media conference, David Kidwell says the men have let down a lot of people.
He has values to uphold, can't express enough. They have broken my trust. Teammates' trust is in public.
David Kidwell, the Kiwis coach. The 2 players admitted being very drunk after the league test in Canberra, but neither could recall exactly what happened that night. Test results confirm the fungal plant infection myrtle rust is present at a second site in Kerikeri in Northland. The new property is a private residence and is in the same street as the original confirmed infected nursery. Earlier today, the Ministry for Primary Industries said a second nursery in Kerikeri was under suspicion of having myrtle rust, but tests proved negative. Further testing is being done. The lawyer for the Whanganui MP, Chester Borrows, has applied for a charge of careless driving causing injury to be dismissed. The National Party MP is on trial in the Whanganui District Court over an incident at a political protest last year in which 2 women were injured. Nathan Burke says Mr Borrows' driving was reasonable considering a Facebook threat made against his passenger, the Cabinet Minister Paula Bennett. He says police witnesses agree the MP was driving slowly and he argued the protesters had time to get out of the way. The judge says she'll make a judgment on the application tomorrow morning. Piha business owners are boosting security after a spate of suspicious fires in the Auckland seaside community. Residents say they're afraid and angry after the popular takeaway shop, Adie's Place, was gutted by fire early yesterday morning. The manager of Piha Domain Camp, Fiona Anderson, says she slept overnight in her car there to keep a watch and she's employing extra security tonight.
I feel really anxious, really vulnerable. I've become really aware of just how exposed we are in this small community. But yeah, I'm really concerned. I'm very vulnerable.
Fiona Anderson from the Piha Domain Camp. The police are urging anyone with information about the fires to contact them or Crime Stoppers. A group of vandals smashed several shop fronts in an early morning rampage in the Auckland suburb of Mangere Bridge. A kitchen hand at Lucky Cafe, Sarom Ross, says he arrived at work about 5 o'clock and shortly afterwards he saw a group of men smashing the glass at the front of the shop. The police say they're looking at CCTV footage as part of their investigation. The Prime Minister says Australia hasn't ruled out imposing more restrictions on New Zealanders living there. Bill English has had to seek clarification from his Australian counterpart twice over the last few weeks about proposed changes to citizenship qualifications and student loan rules. Mr English says Australia has agreed to keep New Zealand in the loop, but he's had no reassurances it won't impose more restrictions on New Zealanders living there.
We're always keen to hear assurances that entitlements aren't going to be changed. We haven't had those assurances last week, but I think we have got the grounds for ongoing discussion where we would be seeking to get some assurances.
Bill English. A former Kohanga Reo trustee who triggered an investigation by the Serious Fraud Office into the trust is taking legal action to defend his reputation. Tony Waho was dismissed for bringing the trust into disrepute in 2014 when he wrote to the Minister of Education about fresh allegations of financial wrongdoing within the trust. His lawyer, Felix Skyringer, told the High Court in Wellington today that following the letter, the Serious Fraud Office was called. But he said Mr Waho was doing the right thing by speaking out.
When a trustee is told that the funds of the trust are being misspent, essentially are being stolen by other people, absolutely that trustee and every trustee that heard about this had an obligation at law to make sure that they got to the bottom of these allegations and that they did it promptly. That didn't happen.
Felix Skyringer said Tony Waho wants the court to declare he did not bring the trust into disrepute by alerting the authorities. It's 6:05. To sport, after 36 previous attempts and a broken neck, the New Zealand equestrian Andrew Nicholson says it was worth the wait after finally winning badminton for the first time. The 55-year-old who broke his neck in 2015 holds the record for having completed the most badminton events without victory. But on Nerio, it was 37th time lucky for Nicholson.
It's been worth the wait. The feeling is I'll go to the big events nowadays. If I have a live chance, I know it's a live chance and I want to win it. And then if you're lucky enough to win it, you're not flat, but you feel like you've done what you went to do. I've come here with that idea, but the feeling is 100 times better.
3 New Zealanders finished in the top 5, with Tim Price third and Sir Mark Todd fourth. Changes to New Zealand's qualifying pathway for the Basketball World Cup won't increase NBA player Steven Adams' prospect of finally playing for New Zealand. The draw for the first phase of qualifying for the 2019 World Cup has been made with the Tall Blacks to play Hong Kong, South Korea and China. However, the coach Paul Henare says the prospect of Steven Adams taking part remains slim, as the international window for the qualifiers doesn't line up with the NBA timetable, and Adams is likely to have commitments with his Oklahoma City side. The former All Blacks and Blues and now Ulster wing Charles Piha has been named the English Premiership's Player of the Year. And the New Zealand Davis Cup player Michael Venus has combined with American Ryan Harrison to win the ATP Clay Court event in Portugal. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, the psychologist Samuel West. He likes losers. So much he's helped to set up a museum to failure, a collection point for all the dumb things we've done, opening in Sweden, because only through failure can we succeed. Sean Hendy brings the physics, perhaps a bit of Heisenberg uncertainty, and Steve Broadius begins a new series of readings dedicated to his mum on Nights with me, Brian Crump, from after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow: Northland, Auckland, Coromandel Peninsula and Bay of Plenty. Mainly fine, the odd shower about Northland this evening, spreading elsewhere tomorrow. Waikato to Wellington, including Taupo, Taumaranui and Taihape. Mostly cloudy, a few showers from Taranaki to Kapiti today, spreading elsewhere tomorrow. From Gisborne to Wairarapa, fine with high cloud. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, mainly fine today and a period of rain tomorrow. Bulla to Fiordland, a few showers turning to rain this evening from the south. Some heavy and thundery falls possible about Westland and Bulla tomorrow. Rain clearing south of Hokitika tomorrow afternoon or evening. Otago and Southland, mainly fine. A few spots of rain this evening and tomorrow morning, and the Chatham Islands mostly cloudy. It's 6:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Nice work, Katrina Batten. Thank you very much indeed. Lots of updating going on because there's lots of breaking news tonight. As Katrina said at the top of the 6 o'clock news, a night on the town following their trouncing in Friday night's Anzac Test has cost Kiwi captain Jesse Bromwich and teammate Kevin Proctor their places in the upcoming Rugby League World Cup. The pair were allegedly caught in buying cocaine outside a Canberra nightclub just hours after their 34-8 loss. Was that the score? Was that the actual score? I thought it was 32-10 or something.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Anyway, whatever it wasn't good. Against the Kangaroos, Kiwi coach David Kidwell told a media conference just after 5 o'clock tonight that the players would no longer be considered for the World Cup. Obviously, that is a very big thing for the players. He said they had values to uphold and had broken his trust, their teammates' trust, and the trust of the New Zealand public. Former Kiwis coach Graham Lowe says that decision is the right one.
They are good players, but you've got to put a line in the sand, and it doesn't just because you can catch the ball and run fast and tackle doesn't mean to say you should be exempt from behaviour that's not acceptable, and also it doesn't mean that you can disrespect the history, of the game and the guardianship that you hold while you're playing it.
Are you saying that when you wear the black jersey, when you earn your living playing rugby league, and when you are a role model for young people, the bar is higher?
Yeah, the bar is high. Well, quite apart from the alleged cocaine situation, to be out after 5 o'clock in the morning celebrating after being flogged the night before, I mean, that is absolute disrespect at its highest.
The Kiwis coach has had a tough old time, hasn't he? Did he need to declare that he is the boss here? In other words, there is a sense that there has been a bit of player power at all levels of rugby league in New Zealand. Is this a declaratory line in the stand by league bosses?
I think it's a milestone in David Kidwell's career.
Really? It's that big?
I think it is, because he's knows those guys really well. He's good mates with them, I'm sure. And to draw the line in the sand that he's done is not easy. I know what he would have faced. It's not easy, but he's put a far bigger picture ahead of what could be a short-term gain.
Graham Lowe talking to us exactly an hour ago, just after this was announced by New Zealand Rugby League. We asked for your feedback at the time, and we've received a great deal of it, and it's really split, very evenly split. Lots of people saying, yep, you snort the cocaine, you are a role model, you cannot play for New Zealand, and lots of other people saying, hey, hold on a sec. And this sums up the hold on a sec school of thought. They are rugby players. They are rugby league players. They are great rugby league players. They are not and never will be role models. Children should aspire to play like them, not be like them. We shouldn't promote any sports people to children as anything more than sports people. However, on the other side of the coin, oh, come on, John, this is not throwing the book. It's a wet shoelace. If it was a swimmer, cyclist, athlete, rower, and they had banned drugs in their system, that is a 2-year minimum ban and life for a second offence. I'm not sure whether we know whether they had banned drugs in their system yet. I think all of this is still unfolding, and we get around that by saying allegedly a great deal. Anyway, thank you so much for your feedback. We really appreciate it. 6:11. Piha businesses, west of Auckland, of course, are beefing up security and even sleeping at their premises overnight after a spate of suspicious fires in the famous seaside community. Residents say they're afraid and angry after the iconic takeaway shop, 80s Place, was gutted by fire early yesterday morning. 2 suspicious scrub fires also kept firefighters busy over the weekend, and locals' nerves really on edge. Anusha Bradley reports.
A dream holiday in Fiji turned into a nightmare when the owner of 80s Place, Adrian Doggett, got the call to say his fish and chip shop had been gutted by fire.
We were checking in at Nandi Airport, the phone rang and told me, the lady that called told me that the shop had burnt down that night, and my wife broke down in tears over the counter, and we had a very uncomfortable flight back. But I mean, you've got to look on the positive side. You know, we are insured to a degree, and we will arise somehow.
Adrian Doggett says all his staff have been fingerprinted by the police today to eliminate them from their inquiries. Rumours are rife in Piha over who's lighting the fires, with talk one person's been taken into custody for questioning. The police say that's incorrect, and they're urging anyone with information about the fires to come forward. Surf instructor and secretary of the Lion Rock Board Riders Club, Phil Wallace, says he understands residents feel scared, but he's appealing for calm.
It is seen as an attack on the village, but as yet we haven't been given enough information to know who it is or what's happening, and we've ended up with people talking about vigilante action and people making false allegations, and it just doesn't help. The police have just got to do their job.
The manager of the Piha Domain Campground, Fiona Anderson, says she's employing extra security tonight to keep watch.
I feel really anxious, really vulnerable. I've become really aware of just how exposed we are in this small community. We're a long way away from extra backup. I mean, our volunteer firefighters are just amazing. But yeah, I'm really concerned. I'm very vulnerable. Slept in the camping ground, out in the camping ground myself last night. every little light. We have a lot of security lights around the place, so anytime a light goes on, someone's straight over there to check it straight away, and just really hoping that the police and the fire investigators catch this person really soon.
The owner of the Piha Cafe, Jean-Paul Knight, says he's also very concerned about the arson attacks.
For sure, it's a heck of a worry. It's like, you know, you've got short insurance and he does so much, but you've got everything to think about and all the people to think about. There's cameras left, all the lights on, everything on, there's outside sensors. You have to do what you can do. And I'm really upset about the bush because that's why I love it. And I just walked up Lion Rock now to have a look, and it's like, wow, it's awful. And the tourism's such a big part about here, it's really sad.
The police say they've received an overwhelming response from the public so far, and they're working hard to identify the person or people responsible. For Checkpoint, Anusha Bradley.
So Piha is west of the city. Let's head to the city south now, Mangere Bridge, where business owners say they're considering beefing up their security after 6 men smashed their way into 3 shops with baseball bats early this morning. Sarom Rowe had just got to work at 5 a.m. when he heard the men breaking in and tried to confront them.
I saw a group of people, maybe 5 or 6 people. They tried to break down the glass into the shop. I tried to shout at them. What are you doing? What the are you doing? So that they don't afraid of me. They don't afraid of us. And they keep breaking the glass into the shop.
The men then turned next door to Paul Kennedy's fruit and veggie shop, causing at least $4,000 worth of damage.
It appears that sort of anybody can commit a crime these days and almost get away with it. Maybe it's because the word's out there amongst that fraternity that, hey, come down to Mangere Bridge. They don't put garage doors up over the front of their shops, you know. But we don't want to start doing something like that in our community. Makes it look pretty awful, you know, really.
How does it make you feel that might be what you need to do to stop having this happen?
That'd be very disappointing if we had to do that. It'd be real disappointing.
Paul Kennedy, who is the owner of the Mangere Bridge fruit and veggie shop. The police say they're reviewing CCTV footage from the area, and of course they would really like to hear from anyone who can help them with their inquiries. Same too in Piha, obviously. 6:16. Emmanuel Macron says a new page of hope has been turned in France's history after he decisively won the country's presidential election. The 39-year-old pro-European centrist will be France's youngest president, and also the first from outside the 2 main traditional parties since the modern republic's foundation in 1958. With virtually all of the votes counted, Mr Macron won 66% of the vote to far-right candidate Marine Le Pen's 34%. In a speech to thousands of cheering supporters, he promised to fight division, rebuild the country's relationship with the EU, and combat threats posed by terrorism and climate change. Ms Le Pen, meanwhile, asserted she has now established the National Front as the main party of opposition in France. The BBC's Damien Grammaticus is in Paris.
There was an eruption of noise as Emmanuel Macron appeared on the giant stage in front of the Louvre. His supporters, young and ethnically diverse, were ecstatic. They believe Mr Macron promises something fresh, optimistic and hopeful, a new direction for France. He said he wouldn't disappoint them.
Une nouvelle page de notre longue histoire s'ouvre ce soir.
A new page in our long history is opening this evening, one of hope and confidence regained. Our public life will be renewed as of tomorrow, a more moral public life. Democratic vitality will, from the first day, be at the heart of concerns.
Le socle de mon action.
President at just 39 years old, Mr Macron is France's youngest leader since Napoleon Bonaparte. It's an extraordinary achievement for a man who founded his own political movement a year ago. His aim was to give French people tired of their old political parties a new choice, occupying the liberal centre ground, pro-European, in favour of globalisation. Above all, Mr Macron's vision is a repudiation of the populist anti-establishment wave that brought Brexit and Donald Trump. His opponent, the far-right anti-EU Marine Le Pen, campaigned saying globalisation hurt French workers. She wanted to close borders, restrict immigration. She was soundly beaten. Ms Le Pen told her supporters the National Front was now the country's main opposition party.
With this huge and historic result, the French people have decided that our alliance of patriots and Republicans are now the main opposition to the programme of the new president. The first round confirmed a major breakdown of France's political life, with the elimination of the old parties. This second round brought about a redrawing of the political map, based on the divide between French patriots and those in favour of globalisation.
Above all, though, this is an election that will reverberate across Europe, represents a triumph for Europe's centrists. Mr Macron has already been congratulated by EU leaders. He's promised to work to strengthen the EU, and that means the UK, about to negotiate Brexit terms, will face an EU that may feel it's starting to reverse the populist, Eurosceptic tide.
That's the BBC's Damien Grammaticus reporting. A former Kohanga trustee who lost his job after he blew the whistle over allegations of financial impropriety has taken his legal battle to the High Court. Tony Waho argues he was acting with integrity back in 2014 when he wrote to the Minister of Education to raise his concerns about fresh allegations of financial wrongdoing within the trust. But the trust said his actions brought it into disrepute and they dismissed him. Lee Marama McLaughlin was at the High Court in Wellington today for the latest twist in this Kohanga saga.
The court was told that the husband of a former employee at the Kanger National Trust demanded $800,000 or he would take a list of allegations against trustees to the media. In his opening statement, Tony Waho's lawyer Felix Geiringer said his client was asked to keep the list and the blackmail threat a secret. Instead, Mr Waho sent a letter to the then Minister of Education, Hekia Parata, to inform her that there were more allegations.
He said, we've got to investigate these allegations and we can't pay money to anyone to try and keep them hidden. That would be wrong. And what other people said in response, this is his case, is no, it would be terrible for the trust if these allegations were made public at this moment.
That's because the trust was only just recovering from fierce scrutiny after the head of its commercial arm, Linda Tawhiwhirangi, was fired in 2013 for misusing her credit card.
Mr Waho's position is it would be dishonest of them to meet with the ministers and agree a public statement that says, look at this wonderful report we've just got back, this trust hasn't misspent public money, isn't that wonderful? When the ministers don't know, and the people who produced the report don't know, that in the meantime, the trustees have become privy to a whole raft of additional accusations.
Mr Waho's letter triggered an investigation by the Serious Fraud Office, which found no crimes were committed. In 2014, Mr Waho was removed from the trust for bringing it into disrepute, and he's been fighting his dismissal ever since. When the High Court declined to stop it, he went to the Court of Appeal, who also dismissed his case, so he's gone back to the High Court. Mr Geiringer argues that Mr Waho was forced out for being honest and acting with integrity.
When a trustee is told that the funds of the trust are being misspent, essentially are being stolen by other people, absolutely that trustee and every trustee that heard about this had an obligation at law to make sure that they got to the bottom of these allegations and that they did it promptly. That didn't happen.
In a break from Maori custom, there was no mihi or warm exchange between Mr Waho and representatives of the Kohanga National Trust today. 5 female Kohanga representatives, including Tina Olsen-Ratana and Dame Iritana Tawhiwhirangi, watched on from the public gallery. The defence will make its opening statement at the end of the week or early next week. The trial is set to run for 12 days. Mo te hōtaka o te ahiahi, ko Lee Marama McLaughlin tēnei.
Thank you, Lee. Just before we move on, if you were listening to Jonathan Mitchell do the business news about 50 minutes ago, you would have heard Jonathan talk about the Reserve Bank saying make sure your sum insured amount is a fair reflection of actually the value, the replacement value of your house. We've heard from a couple of people, including Ken Martin, who says because of the Kaikoura earthquake, some insured amounts are unable to be increased meantime in some areas. We'd love to hear from you. If you try to increase your sum insured amount and been turned down, please do get in touch. Checkpoint at radionz.co.nz or text us 2101. It's 23.5 with Checkpoint on RNZ and, of course, Face TV, Sky Channel 83, Freeview Channel 50 and Facebook. Let's go to the remote northeastern Nigerian town of Chibok now. Parents are nervously awaiting the arrival of 82 schoolgirls freed by Boko Haram militants. The girls have been released as part of a prisoner swap deal and have been flown to the capital, Abuja, where they met with the country's president. So obviously that's where the parents are waiting. They're among more than 250 girls kidnapped from their school in Chibok 3 years ago. The ABC's Africa correspondent Sally Sarah reports.
Nigerian officials couldn't hide their excitement and relief as the 82 girls arrived in Abuja. The President's Chief of Staff, Abba Kyari, was on hand to greet them.
Welcome our girls, welcome our sisters. We're happy to have you back. We're very glad that you are back. And every Nigerian today must be forgetting every other hardship is suffering because it is a very joyous moment. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Government Medical Director Anne Okafor promised that they would receive proper care.
We're going to do the best we can for them, that's for sure. And that will be the best that you can get anywhere in the world.
Iman Shihu from the Bring Back Our Girls campaign said it was as if heaven had come down to earth.
It's a welcome development. It gladdens our hearts. And we know that even the parents of the girls are happy because it means gradually closure, we are attaining closure. And of course, all 1 million Nigerians are happy.
The girls spent 4 years in captivity under the control of Islamist group Boko Haram. The terrorists abducted 276 female students from a boarding school in the town of Chibok in northeastern Nigeria in April 2014. Boko Haram has been waging a terrorist campaign against government forces and has pledged its allegiance to Islamic State. The mass kidnapping drew international condemnation. The Bring Back Our Girls campaign has been relentless in its efforts to secure their freedom. Founding member Baki Senoberi says all of the hard work has paid off.
This is a very, very exciting news for the parents, for the Chibok community, for their relatives, for their friends and for their family. So, yes, it's a very exciting and welcome development for us.
The Nigerian government has confirmed that the girls were freed in exchange for several Boko Haram militants, but it won't confirm how many. The Swiss government and international negotiators were involved in the deal. The International Committee of the Red Cross assisted with some of the logistics once the agreement was struck. ICRC spokeswoman Alexandra Moiseman says there is much more work to be done.
Apart from the Chibok group, there are so many other children in there, thousands who are not with their families today because of the armed conflict that's raging in the northeast of Nigeria. They also need to be reunited with their families, and I hope that many more families are going to get the good news that the families of the 82 girls are getting today.
International Red Cross spokesperson Alexandra Mossiman ending that report from Sally Sarah. It's 27 minutes past 6. We are going to end tonight the way we began it too, which is with New Zealand Rugby League. I actually am holding their official statement put out after that media conference just over an hour ago. Kiwis coach David Kidwell and New Zealand Rugby League have made the decision that Jesse Bromwich and Kevin Proctor will not be considered for the upcoming Rugby League World Cup campaign. I can't express my disappointment enough in their actions in the early hours of Saturday morning. This is a quote from David Kidwell. We have values to uphold. They have broken my trust, their teammates' trust, and the trust of the New Zealand public, Kidwell says. In our Te Iwi Kiwi house, no one is bigger than the team. Now we move forward and focus on the Rugby League World Cup. Chief Executive Alex Hayton says NZRL 100% backs the decision not to consider these men. We must uphold the values of the game. NZRL and the Kiwis will continue to work hard to ensure the people of New Zealand are proud to support our teams both on and off the field. So we covered this as the show began tonight because all of this was unfolding in Sydney as we went to air, that media conference at 5 o'clock, and that statement came out afterwards. And we asked for feedback, and we get a lot of feedback, and it's often very strongly one way or the other. This is very, very evenly split, your feedback in response to that announcement from the New Zealand Rugby League. For example, hi John, Jan here. The Rugby League organisation will need to take a long-term view of this. Parents around the country will be thinking about which sport their child should play. Hi John, you have to admit they're going out partying until 5 a.m. after that performance shows a truly remarkable lack of any realistic understanding of what a crap game they had played. I do tend to agree with that, but I don't think that that lack of understanding of what a crap game they had played is the reason that they have been stood down. Hi, John. The league players are men, not boys. They're overpaid and role models. Well done, NZRL. They need to take responsibility for their actions, says Debbie. On the subject of New Zealand Rugby League players taking cocaine, it seems to me just a consequence of the massive alcohol culture which surrounds sport. Give me a cocaine-taking person to deal with in a totally drunk leaguey anytime. This is a storm in a teacup. Is it supposed to be a way of making the alcohol barons look like a bunch of angels, says Peter. And finally, very split feedback. Hi, John, from Andrew. Actually, he didn't say hi, John, but I know you're thinking that, Andrew. These poor rugby league guys were just out having fun on their own time. People should lighten up about recreational drugs. What about alcohol? Well, I think that had a fair bit of that as well. But really split feedback. We appreciate it. It's lovely to hear from you on behalf of our excellent team. Just a reminder, actually, Andy from Face TV is in watching us go to air tonight. You can watch us go to air on Face TV, Sky Channel 83. You can also watch us on Freeview Channel 50 and Facebook. And you can listen to us, as many of you are still doing, on the wireless. However you are there, we are delighted to have your company, and we will be back tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. Until then, on behalf of our excellent team, ka kite anō, and a very good evening indeed.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The Kiwis players Jesse Bromwich and Kevin Proctor have been axed from the squad for October's World Cup. The plant disease myrtle rust has been confirmed at a second site in Kerikeri. Cyclone Donna has swept over northern Vanuatu and is now heading for New Caledonia as a Category 5 storm with winds gusting up to 300 kilometres an hour. The lawyer for Whanganui MP, Chester Borrows, has applied for a charge of careless driving causing injury to be dismissed. And Piha business owners are boosting security after a spate of suspicious fires. Our next news and weather is at 7.
Time is written on your face.
Robin Hitchcock has been releasing his surrealist pop songs now for 40 years, and if you've never heard them, his latest album makes as good an introduction as any. I'm Nick Bollinger, and I'll be reviewing it in The Sampler. Elliot Childs will be